The morning sun spilled golden light across the neighborhood, sparkling on the dew that clung to the blades of grass. From the kitchen window, I had the perfect view of our lawn, freshly cut, watered, and lined with flowers Uncle Bill had planted last spring. The smell of coffee filled the room, but the peaceful start to the day was shattered when I saw him again. The HOA patrol officer, Mr. Douglas, strutted across our lawn as if it belonged to him. Clipboard in one hand, radio crackling on his belt, his heavy boots left a trail of muddy impressions across the green grass. He didn't so much as glance at the stepping stones laid out for walking. Instead, he cut straight through the flowers and moved toward the opposite street. My jaw tightened. This was the third time this week. He always claimed it was faster than walking around, but each step felt like a personal insult. The HOA preached about rules, boundaries, and appearances, yet their patrol was trampling ours without hesitation. I muttered under my breath, "There he goes again." From upstairs, the sound of a door creaked open. Uncle Bill stepped out onto the deck, arms folded across his chest, eyes narrowing as he looked down at the officer. He didn't shout. He didn't wave. He just stood there, silent as a statue, watching every careless boot print press into the soil. Douglas scribbled something on his clipboard, maybe pretending it was official business, but his shortcut had nothing to do with inspection. He was lazy, and our lawn had become his path. Uncle Bill's face was unreadable, but the way his fingers drummed lightly against the wooden rail told me he was thinking. And when Uncle Bill thought in silence like that, I knew he was planning something. The camera of the mind would linger on the officer's boots crushing the grass, then pan up to Uncle's calm, calculating stare from the deck. The contrast was chilling. That evening, the orange glow of sunset stretched long shadows across the yard. Uncle Bill sat in his usual spot on the deck, an old wooden chair creaking beneath him, a glass of iced tea sweating in his hand. His silence was not the silence of peace. It was the silence before a storm. I joined him, still fuming from the morning. "Uncle, he's ruining the lawn. Every day, same path, same mess." Uncle Bill's weathered face remained calm. He sipped his tea, the ice clinking against the glass. His eyes stayed fixed on the lawn, where the officer's footprints were still visible, pressed deep into the damp soil. Finally, in that gravelly voice of his, he said, "He doesn't respect the land. Some folks don't learn unless the land teaches them back." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Uncle didn't answer right away. Instead, he nodded toward the corner of the yard, where several wooden boxes were stacked near the shed. Painted white, neat and sturdy, they almost blended into the background. But I knew what they were. Beehives. Uncle Bill had been a beekeeper for years, his colonies buzzing quietly in the background of our lives. Normally, he kept them tucked away behind the shed, out of sight, out of mind. But tonight, his gaze lingered on them differently. "You know," he said, setting down the glass, "bees are the best teachers. They don't start trouble. They don't care for power. But you step where you don't belong, they'll remind you real quick." I stared at him, realization dawning. "You're not thinking." But he was. I could see it in his smile. It wasn't wide or mischievous, just a calm, satisfied curve of the lips. Uncle Bill never raised his voice. He never fought loud battles. But when someone crossed him, he had a way of letting nature handle the justice. And this time, nature came with wings and stingers. The next morning dawned brighter than ever, the sky a pale blue canvas. Uncle Bill rose earlier than usual, pulling on his old beekeeping suit. The fabric was worn, the veil slightly frayed, but he wore it like armor. From my spot on the deck, I watched as he moved with deliberate slowness toward the shed. He lifted one hive, then another, his strong hands balancing the weight with practiced ease. The air soon filled with a low, steady hum. Bees swirled lazily around him, golden wings glinting in the sun. They weren't angry, just curious. Uncle Bill always said bees mirror the energy of the keeper. Calm hands, calm bees. He placed the hives right along the very path Mr. Douglas always cut through. It was almost surgical in precision. The boxes sat like guardians of the lawn, a buzzing barrier between our house and the street shortcut. Each hive lined up neatly, their white paint stark against the green grass. From my vantage point, it was half terrifying, half brilliant. Uncle Bill didn't speak. He didn't explain. He just set each hive, gave it a gentle pat, and stepped back, his smile hidden beneath the veil. The suspense was unbearable. The trap wasn't loud or violent. It was quiet, natural, and alive. By mid-morning, the lawn looked like a fortress of honeybees, the soft hum rising and falling like a warning. Uncle Bill returned to the deck, stripped off his suit, and settled back into his chair. He lifted his glass of tea, clinked the ice against the side, and whispered, almost to himself, "Now we wait." Late morning, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. The HOA patrol car, white with green stripes, rolled slowly into view. My heart thudded. Mr. Douglas stepped out, the same clipboard in his hand, the same stiff walk. He didn't notice the hives at first. His eyes were glued to the paper, checking boxes, scribbling notes. He walked forward, automatic as ever, his boots aiming straight for his usual shortcut. Uncle Bill leaned forward in his chair, silent, his expression unreadable. I gripped the railing of the deck, knuckles white. As Douglas approached the first hive, the hum grew louder. A few bees hovered near him, curious about the intruder. He glanced up, startled, finally realizing the white boxes blocking his path. He hesitated, frowned, then muttered something under his breath. Instead of turning back, he stubbornly tried to sidestep between two hives. That's when a bee zipped near his ear. He swatted it, annoyed, not realizing the mistake he'd just made. The buzzing intensified. More bees lifted into the air, swirling like a living storm cloud. Douglas froze, wide-eyed. The camera of the mind would zoom in on the sweat beading his forehead, the clipboard trembling in his hand. From the deck, Uncle Bill didn't move. He just sipped his tea. Douglas panicked. He dropped his pen, swiping at the bees circling closer. The hum grew into a roar, filling the air with a sound that made my chest tighten. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the hive behind him. The bees weren't attacking yet. They were warning him, pressing into his space, darting close enough to make him flinch. His swats grew wilder, his steps clumsier. From the house across the street, Karen Whitmore appeared, clutching her robe tight, curiosity lighting her face. She always relished HOA drama. Now she stood frozen, watching the patrol officer flail like a puppet tangled in invisible strings. Douglas shouted, "Get them off me," but no one moved. Uncle Bill stayed seated, calm as a monk. His tea glass clinked softly as he set it down. Then, inevitably, Douglas made the fatal error. He slapped one bee hard against his arm. The crushed body fell, and in that instant, the hive's mood shifted. The swarm launched forward, a golden wave of wings and stingers. Douglas screamed, running in circles, arms flailing as bees clung to his uniform. He bolted across the yard, trampling flowers, finally diving into his patrol car. The engine roared as he sped away, windows rolled up tight, bees still clinging to the windshield. Karen gasped, horrified yet unable to look away. Uncle Bill leaned back, a faint smile touching his lips. "Lesson 1, he murmured. But Karen was never one to let things go. By evening, she marched up to our deck, heels clacking against the driveway, her face red with fury. She jabbed a finger at Uncle Bill. "This is outrageous. You can't keep dangerous animals on a community lawn. Someone could get hurt." Uncle Bill raised an eyebrow, unbothered. "They're not animals, Karen. They're bees. They don't bother anyone unless they're bothered first." Karen huffed. "The HOA will hear about this. You're endangering the whole neighborhood." I stood nearby, watching the exchange, my pulse racing. Karen's voice carried across the street, drawing more curious neighbors. Some nodded in agreement, but others whispered with interest. After all, wasn't it Douglas who trespassed? Uncle Bill didn't argue. He simply said, "Karen, you've never cared about our lawn. Why the sudden concern now?" Her lips pressed tight, fury flashing in her eyes. She spun on her heel, storming off toward her house. But the bees hummed louder in the distance, their sound following her like an unspoken warning. The next day, the HOA held an emergency meeting in the community hall. Chairs scraped, Papers shuffled, and tension thickened the air. Karen took the floor immediately, her voice shrill. Those hives are a menace. That man is weaponizing bees. Our patrol officer was nearly killed. Gasps spread through the crowd, but then Linda Parker stood. Soft-spoken yet firm, she countered, "With respect, Karen, the officer trespassed. Everyone here knows he's been walking through their yard for months. If anyone endangered themselves, it was him." Murmurs rippled. Heads nodded. Some homeowners even smiled. For once, Karen wasn't winning. Uncle Bill sat quietly at the back, hat low, arms crossed. He never spoke, but his presence alone was steadying. The meeting ended without a vote. The HOA divided, unsure whether to challenge him or back down. Back home, the days passed in strange peace. The patrol stopped coming near our yard. Karen avoided eye contact. The bees worked busily, oblivious to the drama they'd stirred. Uncle Bill continued his routine, tea on the deck, tending the hives, calm as ever. Yet the tension still hung in the air, like thunderclouds before a storm. I asked him, "Do you think this is over?" He chuckled, low and quiet. "With Karen around? Not a chance." One night, under the cover of darkness, Karen crept across the lawn with a can of pesticide. Her eyes darted nervously, but determination hardened her jaw. She raised the can, aiming at the nearest hive. But before she could spray, a figure shifted in the shadows. Uncle Bill stepped onto the deck, lantern in hand. His voice cut through the night. "Karen." She froze. The bees stirred at the sudden movement, their hums swelling. Karen's hand trembled, the can slipping from her grip. Uncle's gaze was steady. "Go home, or they'll finish what you started." Terrified, she turned and ran, tripping over her robe as the buzzing followed her retreat. By morning, word spread of Karen's failed attempt. Neighbors shook their heads, gossip filling the air. The HOA, embarrassed, finally backed down. They issued no fines, no threats. The patrol never returned. Uncle Bill sat on the deck, bees buzzing peacefully around the hives, sunlight warming his face. He sipped his tea, eyes glinting with quiet victory. I joined him, a smile tugging at my lips. "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" He nodded. "Sometimes you don't fight fire with fire. You fight trespass with bees." The camera would pull back slowly, showing the peaceful lawn, the golden hives standing like sentinels, and Uncle Bill's calm figure on the deck. The hum of bees rose into the sky, a sound of both warning and peace. And so, justice was served, not by shouting or fists, but by nature itself.